You're listening to the Fertility Docs Uncensored podcast, featuring insight on all things fertility from some of the top-rated doctors around America. Whether you're struggling to conceive or just planning for your future family, we're here to guide you every step of the way.
Hello, and welcome to the Fertility Docs Uncensored podcast. I'm the producer, Brandy Thomas, and I'm going to be on this episode today. This is our first episode. We're really excited about it. I do not matter, though, because we have three amazing doctors who are going to be doing this podcast, as well as doctors from all over the country. We're all going to be coming together and discussing everything in fertility. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them on and introduce them. First off, we have Carrie Bedient, who is a fertility specialist with the Fertility Center of Las Vegas.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be here, especially with all of you lovely ladies, talking about all of the fertility issues that we see and deal with every day, both on a scientific level and on the very human level, because all of us have such different experiences within this field with both patients and our personal experiences as well. So I am very excited to be here.
That's awesome. So what's your background in fertility?
So like most docs, I went to all the way up through about the 24th, 25th grade, and went to medical school in Arizona, which is where I grew up, and then went to residency in Cleveland and then fellowship in Atlanta at Emory University, and then came out to Las Vegas because I am a desert rat at heart and am just very much at home in the mountains and the heat. And so
you must be pretty excited with where we're recording. Well, I guess you live here, so it doesn't. The rest of us are very excited to be sitting here in front of palm trees recording in Vegas, but since you live here, that is wow. Okay, so that's great. So, and we also have Susan Hudson here with Texas Fertility Center. So, Susan, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about your background and what you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to be here as well. I think this is the beginning of something really, really special. I am a Texan true and true. I grew up in Central Texas and did undergrad and medical school through Texas A&M University. Whoop. And then I did residency also through Scott & White, Texas A&M. And then I decided to go up north to the frosty land of the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota for 3 years to do my fellowship, and then came straight back to Texas because it's truly home.
Awesome. Cool. Very cool. So, and then we also have Abby Eblen here. Sorry about that. With Nashville Fertility Center. Do you want to go ahead and talk? What are you doing with this podcast, and why did you decide to get involved with it?
So the reason I really decided to get involved is, I think fertility is really an important medical issue for a lot of women, but it's really personal for me too. I was a fertility doctor, and I was an infertile fertility doctor, it's really a hard thing to be an infertile fertility doctor. And I'm really thrilled that I was successful, and I have 2 teenagers right now. And so I think I probably am accused of maybe sharing too much with my patients, and they probably don't want to hear my story. So, now I have a good avenue to share my experiences.
There we go. That's awesome. Well, and so getting here, we all joined here together in Las Vegas to do these recordings. We're going to be doing the next 6 to 10 episodes together, which is going to be exciting. But then we're also going to have doctors from different practices recording at their offices, and we're going to be publishing those too. But getting here, I did want to talk a little bit about the experience that Susan had yesterday on the plane ride over here.
We had a little bit of excitement flying from Texas to LA. It's one of those things where you're sitting on the plane and all of a sudden they're like, are there any medical professionals on board? And you have that moment where it's like, okay, I'm a fertility doctor. I'm pretty sure there aren't any fertility emergencies happening right here. But unfortunately, there was a gentleman who had taken a little too much anti-nausea medicines for his trip, and he had a reaction to it. But everything ended up being fine. But fortunately, we didn't have to divert the plane or anything like that.
And how was your blood pressure during all of that?
Oh, yeah. My pulse was probably about 120. Yeah, he's sitting there looking at his fancy little Apple Watch saying, okay, well, I didn't have a heart attack.
I told Susan my biggest fear is, as a medical professional, if I'm on a plane, that I'm going to have to make the decision to divert the plane. And, not too many fertility doctors have to make those big of a decision, Right. So fortunately, that didn't happen in your experience, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. He ended up getting better relatively quickly, and so we were pretty sure there wasn't anything too scary going on.
But of all plane rides for that to happen on. The one when you're coming to do the podcast. That's just you showed up at like 9 p.m. last night. Like, this just happened. Okay.
Exactly. I remember when I was a medical student and we were interviewing for residencies, like flying with my stethoscope because I was so paranoid about something like this happening. And then I guess, with time you get like, it's not going to be a big deal. And then the one time it happens, it's like, whoo, okay, let's try to get all that stuff that I learned a long time ago.
Right. Gosh. Man.
I a few times I would look at my CPR book before I flew because I was just paranoid. There were enough kind of older people there that I was like, how many compressions do I do and how many breaths do I do? And of course, fortunately that we talked about now with CPR, you don't have to worry about giving breaths anymore. It's just chest compressions. But every now and then I like to brush up on that before I fly.
Well, and I like the tip that you said yesterday, break a rib. That's the goal, right?
Well, it's really not the goal, but if you're doing chest compressions, and we're way digressing from fertility here, but if you're doing chest compressions correctly, in theory, you end up breaking ribs. So.
I think that should be like the that's how you've done it right. You've saved a life. Might have broken a rib, but at least you saved a life.
And if you're singing to the tune "Staying Alive,"
right,
you know that your pattern's right and your timing is about right too. And so you can serenade everyone around you while you are saving a life.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show The Office. Have you guys ever seen that?
Absolutely.
There's an episode where the CPR instructor comes in and they do that. They say it's the Singing Alive tune.
Staying Alive, yeah.
Or Staying Alive, and the entire office gets too distracted by dancing to the song.
I actually thought that was a joke when somebody, but it's really true.
It's yeah.
And it gives you the speed because most people do it too slow and they don't press hard enough. So.
Right. Okay. Well, I thought that was just in The Office, so I'm glad that we have actual doctors here to confirm that.
Now that we have all this basic first aid out of the way, maybe we need to talk a little infertility.
Well, and I think that's going to be the great thing about this podcast is having so many different doctor perspectives on here. Even if it does sometimes stray far from infertility, the information that you guys have is so valuable, especially to people like me who know nothing about medical infertility stuff, like I said, I am just on this episode. These ladies are going to be running the show from this point forward. But I did kind of want to ask each of you though, what are your core areas of expertise within infertility? Do you have like a specialized area that you focus on, or is there something specific that's like your favorite part of infertility, or not favorite? That was worded.
No, actually my favorite part of infertility is saying, congratulations, you're pregnant.
Absolutely. Those phone calls
are the best phone calls ever to make. Those are great.
Man, yeah, that must be really, was there, I'm going to actually ask you, Abby, did you ever have someone who had been like trying? What was the longest period that you had someone trying and then you finally got to tell them that news?
Well, actually, I have a patient who was in her teenage years, and I actually saw her. I'm old enough. I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm old enough that I actually saw her when she was 16. She had a really high hormone level of FSH, and hadn't had a period ever, or actually it was, primary. She'd never had a period. And so I diagnosed her with premature ovarian failure when she was 16. So fast forward, about 2 years ago, she came back to me now as a 32-year-old and married, and they had tried for a little bit, hadn't been using birth control, tried for a little bit. She wasn't pregnant, so we checked one of her egg numbers. Now we measure something called anti-Mullerian hormone, or AMH, which kind of gives us an idea of kind of the egg reserve, and hers was a little bit abnormal, but not horribly abnormal. So we tried some treatments. Anyway, fast forward, we ended up doing in vitro fertilization where we took her egg and her husband's sperm, put it together to make an embryo. And of course, I didn't even know if she would be able to do that. I didn't know she had any eggs left. And so we did that, and she ended up having to do 2 cycles. But on the second cycle, she got pregnant. And we're waiting for her ultrasound next week. So
that is so exciting.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled. I can't wait to give her the congratulations, you have a baby in there.
No kidding, considering it started when she was 16.
Yeah, so I'm really, I told her I feel like her surrogate mother, or at least her favorite aunt or something.
Goosebumps. That's so exciting. So with that, there's got to be so many amazing experiences like that for you guys as fertility doctors. I was going to ask Susan, what is the one thing that caused you to lean towards being a fertility doctor? Like, what was your inspiration to go into this field?
Well, originally when I went into med school, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and I realized I really didn't. That wasn't my kind of forte. That helping create parents is one of the greatest joys, and one of the neat things about what we do is that even if you have a couple who comes in with maybe the same issue. So maybe it's a guy with some issue with his sperm and the lady's not ovulating. There's so many other things that go into a person or couple's decision making and what type of treatment is going to be the right thing for them, that you really never know where that discussion is going to lead you. So much of it is the personal interaction and really fitting the whole picture to that couple and figuring out what's going to be the best decision for them at that time. And we always talk about the fertility journey, and it truly is a journey, because you're going to start at one point and you will get somewhere else. We may not know exactly where that point is, but it's a path to be walked together.
Wonderful. Okay. And awesome. Carrie, I actually had the same question for you. Was there anything that kind of like spurred you towards being a fertility doctor, or was it something that you just discovered as you were pursuing your degree?
So as I was going through training, I originally wanted to be a neurosurgeon. And then I realized that anything above the belt was not terribly interesting to me. And so moved below the belt and really discovered that I liked obstetrics and gynecology, and then was thinking about all the different subspecialties, because I've known from the beginning that I wanted to know a lot about just one small area, because what the general obstetricians and gynecologists do is they know a little bit about just a huge volume of topics. So I wanted to know a lot about one narrow area. So I thought about oncology, and I thought about high-risk obstetrics and urogynecology and some of the other fields. And then when I got to fertility, it's a beautiful mix of lab work, of continuity with patients, and getting to know all their intimate stories. And there's nothing better than hearing a heartbeat with a patient for the first time. I'm not particularly scared by tears in the office. I mean, if it's a day where fewer than 3 people have cried in my office, from happy tears, sad tears, frustrated, whatever, then I feel like I'm not really doing my job and letting them express themselves. And so it's just a very nice fit for my personality and what I like to do, both with the science and the medicine and the art of what we do.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, and that's an interesting thought, too. There is a very big psychological component.
Half of what we do is
Oh
psychology.
my gosh.
Really?
And when you said tears, happy tears and sad tears, one time I had a patient who just was devastated. They had saved their last dime to do IVF, and they didn't get pregnant. And the patient was just really almost having an emotional breakdown in the office. And so we kind of got her through that and got her husband there and got some help for her. And I literally went into the next room, and right when I walked in the door, this patient just ran up and hugged me. And she's like, "Thank you, Dr. Eblen. You've made my dreams come true." And it was amazing what it was just major up and down. And I think we see a lot of that with our patients, lots of ups and downs. And like you said, it's a journey. We really see a lot of that. It's sad to see them cry unhappy tears, but it's even more thrilling to see the happy tears on the other end when you actually help them get pregnant.
Yeah, I guess sad tears all the time would be a downer. It's great that you guys have that like balance of.
There's some days like that, though.
Yeah.
We have a lot of sad tears.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the worst part of our job.
Right.
But there's no peaks without valleys. And so if you're up all the time, it means you're not up all the time. It means you're flat.
Yeah.
And so you gotta have the downs in order to get the ups.
For sure. Well, and I'm kind of curious, what drove you guys to want to be part of this podcast? Like, is there anything with infertility information that's out there that you don't agree with? Or is it just a matter of you're wanting to educate people more?
I think one of the hardest things that we deal with is the general incomplete information that's in the media. We hear about this person getting pregnant at an advanced age in their late 40s, early 50s, and they have these miracle babies, or, if you live healthy and you're exercising and eating right, that your eggs are going to be completely fine. And not all of these things are true. They're partial truths. Yes, being healthy for the rest of your body is going to increase your chances of having a healthy pregnancy, but unfortunately, your ovaries are still aging with you. And I think one thing that all of us are called to do is really help fill in the gaps so that people have the information they need, so that if they need care, they can get to it sooner.
Right. Okay. And then for what about, I'll go with Abby. Was there anything aside from that you were really drawn to with doing this podcast?
Well, I think sharing my own experience a little bit, because what I've found is that I think when it's one thing to kind of educate your patient and talk to him about fertility sort of as a third party. But I think when they really realize that you really know what they're feeling like when you get a negative pregnancy test, or when the patients talk a lot about the roller coaster of infertility, that they think it's going to be a great month. They have a good egg. Their husband's sperm's good. They're just ready. They know they're going to be pregnant. And then, boom, they start their period. And it is truly like a roller coaster. And so, I think there's certain things that if you've not experienced that yourself, you just don't realize. And so I kind of wanted to share some of that, because I really do feel like I'm a kindred spirit with a lot of our infertility patients, even though they may not realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, Carrie, what about for you?
I really want to be able to take some of the very technical language that we live and die by as fertility docs, because we're not just clinicians, we're not just surgeons, we also are basic scientists in many respects. Even if you're not doing active lab work, you still have that technical component, and really breaking that down in a way that patients can understand. And so when they're listening to this, kind of know, all right, well, what do we mean by an FSH level? And what do we mean by an AMH level? And your egg count and your follicular count, and how all those things play together, and putting that in real world terms so that when someone is having that conversation with their own doctor, or even just listening to a friend talk about it, they kind of know what's going on. And they know it in real world terms that's actually going to stick in their brain, not just be some textbook that is momentarily engaging and then gone from your memory.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine, there are so many big words associated with fertility. I have no idea. Most of the time, listening to you guys all talk at breakfast, I was like, whoop, nope, over my head. No idea.
It's a whole nother language. It truly is. Even when we get new employees, even people who have had backgrounds in OB-GYN clinics or things like this, it's a whole new world. It truly is a whole language amongst itself.
If you think about it, it's a lot of letters. AMH, FSH, IVF, ICSI, HSG, IUI. Yeah, it's all letters. It's mismatch of letters is what it is.
It's a whole alphabet worth
of. It's really confusing.
It's alphabet soup. So
the infertility alphabet. That's what it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Wow. So and what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I was actually really impressed that we managed to keep our excitement down, because it's not often fertility docs get to work with each other. I mean, I have a group of 2 other people in my office, and I know both of you have quite a few partners, but you don't get that time very often to sit down and talk with each other. So I was actually really impressed that in our excitement for having all these conversations, that all the tables around us didn't get up and walk away after the 8th time they heard the word at breakfast. After the 8th time they heard the word vagina.
That's all I could think about while I'm like sitting there eating my French toast, listening to the conversations. I was like that old couple behind us. Oh,
when I just about yelled out the word sex, I stopped myself. I'm like, oh,
we're in public,
but we are in Vegas, so that's not that far of a stretch.
Yeah, we were at a casino restaurant, right? So I guess that was a pretty.
It's a neighborhood casino.
Exactly. Yes. There you go.
But the people at the restaurant didn't look like the kind of people that we would be having that discussion with them.
Do you guys have to deal with that a lot, with like having to censor yourselves when you're out in public, because you're constantly talking all of this jargon at work all day? So
I have to censor myself at home because I have teenagers and they don't want to hear the words that I have to say. They're afraid to ask me any question that has to do remotely with my field, because I'll be too specific for them and they'll be humiliated.
Right. How many times have you ladies embarrassed your husbands and or children while out at a wedding, bridal shower, baby shower, party, Christmas event, whatever?
It's funny because it's either what we do is either a conversation starter or a conversation ender. So either you have the disperse and run, like, oh no, we can't talk about it. Or in literally 5 minutes, we're going to know everything about people's sex lives, every time they've peed on a stick, every temperature they've taken, every little step that they've had. And so it's just one of those things that you have to, it's a unique part of your life.
And it is amazing the personal information that someone will share with you when you've just met them for the first time.
Right. Well, I mean, that's knowing that you guys are fertility doctors, because that is stuff that us normal, we have to keep inside all the time. So there have been times
spills out at parties sometimes, especially after a glass of wine or two.
I can imagine. I know. Yeah. Well, even last night we were sharing a drink and I started going into my medical issues too. It's just kind of, it happens. It's like but I can imagine that's probably going to get so annoying sometimes too.
Yeah, it's part of it's part of what we are. I mean, we live and breathe helping people have babies, right. And it really doesn't bother me at all when somebody does that. In fact, I much prefer that than the scat and run thing. Yeah. And I practice in
meaningless chatter too.
Right. I practice in a relatively small city, and it's unusual to go to HEB or Target and not run into somebody who's like, oh, "You helped me get pregnant." It's great. It's great. Actually, we were looking at buying a different house in the neighborhood we're in. And one of my former patients was potentially going to be our next door neighbor, and the house buy fell through. But the husband was like so disappointed because he really wanted to tell all his friends that his neighbor knocked up his wife.
That's well, and on that note, I wanted to mention in our podcast name was Fertility Doctors Uncensored. So sometimes we're going to get a little edgy, I'm hoping, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's our daily work is edgy.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us to have all these perspectives and for you guys to be able to open up and, entertain and educate at the same time. This is going to be a super fun podcast.
I can't wait.
Speaking of knocking up, you said the word, it made me think of a funny story. When a couple of years ago at our Christmas party, sometimes our staff, our nurses will roast us a little bit. So one of our nurses took it upon herself to come up with a T-shirt for us, which I've never worn in public, but it was a shirt that had all of our pictures on it. And it says, "Knocking up Nashville since 1989.
That could be perceived in a lot of ways.
That could be perceived, yeah. So.
That's amazing. That's hilarious. Well, this has been just the first of many episodes where I just wanted to give you guys as audience an idea of who you are and kind of get a feel for what to expect. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to add before we sign off of this episode? No?
We're having a blast.
Listening.
I love it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, keep listening.
We're excited to see where this takes us.
Yeah.
Because it'll literally be across the United States.
Yes, yes. Super fun. Well, please, So please, thank you so much for listening to this first episode. This has been Fertility Docs Uncensored. We've got tons of more episodes to come, so tune in. Have a great day.